The storm came like judgment. Black clouds rolled over the valley, swallowing stars and moon alike. Wind bent the pines and rattled windows in their frames. The people of Oak Ridge pulled their shutters tight and waited. Lightning split the sky open. For a moment, the hanging tree stood stark against the darkness, ancient and gnarled, its heavy branches like outstretched arms. The next bolt found it. A blinding flash, a deafening crack. The old oak shuddered as electricity coursed through its heart. When morning came, the townspeople found the tree cleaved nearly in two. Its massive trunk had split down the middle, wood splintered and charred. Sheriff Miller was the first to approach, boots sinking into mud as he circled the wounded giant. "Sweet Jesus," he whispered. Inside the hollow core of the trunk, partially exposed by the lightning strike, was a child. Small wrists bound by rusted chains that disappeared into the wood itself. The body looked mummified, preserved somehow within the living tree. But then the impossible happened. The child's chest rose, fell, rose again. A weak cry drifted from the trunk, carried away by the morning breeze. The hanging tree had given up its secret, and it was still alive. Eleanor Blackwood's cottage sat at the edge of town, where the paved road surrendered to gravel. Paint peeled from the clapboards like old skin. The garden, though, flourished, neat rows of vegetables and wildflowers bordered by smooth stones. It was the only place that seemed truly alive on her property. She was 52, with gray threading through her dark hair and lines etched around her eyes. 23 years teaching at Oak Ridge Elementary had given her a certain authority in her movements, a precision to her speech. The children respected her. Parents nodded when she passed. But no one truly knew her. Every morning, Eleanor walked past the hanging tree on her way to school. The massive oak stood at the center of the town square, its branches reaching over the cobblestones like protective arms. Or grasping ones, depending on how you looked at it. "Morning, old-timer," she murmured, same as always. The tree had been there longer than the town itself. Before the courthouse, before the church, before the first white settlers. The Arapaho considered it sacred, or so the museum plaques claimed. Later, it became something else entirely. A place of judgment, of endings. The last hanging had been in 1937, a young man accused of murdering his employer. The trial lasted 3 hours. The hanging took less than one. Eleanor had heard the story so many times it felt like a memory, though she hadn't been born yet. In her classroom, Eleanor arranged the desks in perfect rows. 22 students this year. 22 young minds still malleable, still hopeful. She touched the chalk, the erasers, the globe in the corner, anchoring herself in routine. "Did you hear about the tree?" Mrs. Holloway asked, appearing in the doorway. The school secretary never knocked. "What about it?" "Lightning struck it last night. Split it clean down the middle." Eleanor's hand froze on the globe. "Is it dead?" "That's not the strange part." Mrs. Holloway leaned forward, voice dropping. "They found something inside. Sheriff's got the whole area taped off." Rain returned that evening, gentler this time. Eleanor sat on her porch, watching droplets collect on spider webs between the railings. Her tea had gone cold. The knock startled her. Visitors were rare, especially after dark. Mr. Jenkins stood on her steps, rainwater streaming from his hat. He clutched a leather satchel to his chest. "Miss Blackwood, forgive the intrusion." Harold Jenkins was the town historian, keeper of Oak Ridge's official memory. 70 years old with a scholar's stoop and eyes that missed nothing. He'd written 3 books on local history, all self-published, all meticulously researched. "May I come in?" "It's about the tree." Eleanor's living room was sparse but comfortable. Books lined one wall. A small fireplace occupied another. No family photos, no mementos. Jenkins declined tea, placing his satchel on the coffee table with careful hands. "I've been researching the hanging tree for decades," he said, removing his glasses to wipe them dry. "There are stories, whispers, really. Things not found in official records." "What kind of things?" "Disappearances. Children mostly. Dating back to the 1800s. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her cup. "What does this have to do with the lightning strike?" "They found a child inside the trunk. A girl, maybe 10 years old, chained within the hollow core." "That's impossible. The tree is hundreds of years old." "Indeed." Jenkins opened his satchel, removed a folder. "The medical examiner can't explain it. The chains are fused with the wood, as if the tree grew around them. Around her. And Eleanor." He looked up, eyes troubled behind smudged lenses. She's alive. That can't be. Barely. They've taken her to County General. She hasn't spoken, hasn't opened her eyes. But she's breathing. Eleanor stood abruptly, walked to the window. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the world outside. Why are you telling me this? Because of your grandmother's journals. Jenkins's voice was gentle. I've read them, Eleanor. In the Historical Society archives. She wrote about a girl who vanished in 1893. A girl named Sarah. Eleanor turned, face pale. My grandmother wasn't born until 1920. Not your maternal grandmother. Your father's mother. Constance Blackwood. Jenkins removed a yellowed photograph from his folder. She believed something terrible happened to Sarah. Something the town covered up. The photograph showed a small girl in a high-collared dress, hair in tight braids. Her eyes seemed to look through the camera, through time itself. I need your help, Eleanor. There's more to this story, and I think you're connected to it. Will you help me find the truth? The question hung between them, heavy as the storm clouds outside. When do we start? Eleanor finally asked. They began in the county records office, a basement room that smelled of mildew and forgotten things. Jenkins moved with purpose through the stacks, pulling leather-bound volumes with practiced ease. Birth records, death certificates, property deeds, he explained. The official story is always incomplete, but it gives us a framework. Eleanor ran her fingers over names and dates, feeling the indentations in the paper. Lives reduced to entries in a ledger. Here, Jenkins said, placing a heavy book before her. 1893. Look for anything about a missing child. They found nothing in the official records. No report of a missing girl named Sarah. No investigation. It was as if she had never existed. This is what I expected, Jenkins sighed. Now we look elsewhere. Elsewhere meant the attic of the old Blackwood house, not Eleanor's cottage, but the original family home on Willow Street. It had passed out of family hands decades ago, but the current owners, an elderly couple named Mercer, welcomed them with curious eyes. The attic's been sealed up since we bought the place, Mrs. Mercer explained, leading them upstairs. Too many stairs for these old knees. The air was thick with dust and silence. Trunks and boxes formed shadowy mountains in the gloom. Jenkins produced a flashlight, its beam cutting through decades of darkness. Your family kept everything, he told Eleanor. That's our good fortune. They worked methodically, sorting through papers, photographs, clothing. Eleanor felt like an archaeologist excavating her own history. She knew so little about her father's side of the family. He had never spoken of them, and after his death when she was 12, there had been no one left to ask. In a small trunk bound with leather straps, Eleanor found a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon. The paper was brittle, threatening to crumble at her touch. Jenkins, she called. Look at these. The letters were from Constance Blackwood to her sister in Boston, spanning the years 1890 to 1895. The early ones were mundane, gossip, weather, complaints about her husband's business ventures. But the tone changed dramatically in a letter dated April 17, 1893. Something terrible has happened, Eleanor read aloud. Sarah has vanished. Thomas says I must not speak of it, that it will bring shame upon us all. But how can I remain silent? She was just a child. Jenkins leaned closer. Keep reading. The town pretends not to see. They look away, just as they did with the others. I cannot bear it. I will not be silenced, no matter what Thomas threatens. Eleanor's hands trembled. Who was Sarah to my grandmother? It doesn't say. Read the next one, Jenkins urged. The following letter was dated 2 months later. The handwriting was shakier, the ink blotched in places. They have taken everything from me now. My child, my voice, my freedom. Thomas says it is for my own good, that I am unwell. Perhaps I am. I hear her crying in the night, Jenkins. I hear her calling from the tree. Eleanor looked up. The tree? The hanging tree? Jenkins nodded grimly. Keep going. The final letter was never sent. It was dated October 31st, 1893, and consisted of a single sentence. They have put me in the walls of my own home, but they cannot wall away the truth. Silence filled the attic. Dust motes danced in the flashlight beam. What does it mean, in the walls? Eleanor whispered. Jenkins took the letter, studied it. I'm not sure, but I think we need to look at the walls of this house very carefully. They searched for hours, tapping on plaster, measuring dimensions against the exterior. The Mercers watched with growing concern but didn't interfere. It was Mrs. Mercer who finally provided the clue they needed. When we renovated the parlor, she said, we found a space behind the chimney. We thought it was just poor design. The space was still there, accessible through a small panel in the back of a closet. Jenkins squeezed through first, then helped Eleanor. Their flashlights revealed a narrow room, barely larger than a coffin. The walls were covered with writing, thousands of words scratched into the plaster with what must have been fingernails or some small implement. My God, Jenkins breathed. The writing told a story, Constance Blackwood's story. Her husband had been a founding member of a group that called themselves the Shepherds of the Grove. Prominent men who gathered at the hanging tree to perform rituals they believed would ensure the town's prosperity. They took children. Eleanor read, horror mounting. Children no one would miss. Orphans. The poor. The unwanted. But Sarah had been different. Sarah had been Constance's daughter, hidden away because of her strangeness. The girl spoke of things she couldn't possibly know, saw things others couldn't see. When she began predicting deaths in the town, Thomas Blackwood decided she was possessed. He gave his own daughter to the Shepherds, Eleanor whispered. His own child. The final entries were fragmented, desperate. Constance had tried to stop them, had threatened to expose them all. So they sealed her in this hidden room, telling the town she had run off with another man. They left her to die, inches from her own life, but unable to reach it. Her last words, scratched higher on the wall where the plaster was softer. Sarah lives in the tree now. I hear her singing. The hospital corridor was antiseptic and bright. Eleanor's footsteps echoed as she followed Dr. Winters toward the secure ward. Jenkins had stayed behind, continuing their research. She's stable, Dr. Winters explained, but unresponsive. Brain activity is normal, which is the most puzzling thing. She should be conscious. Has she spoken at all? Not a word, though she does make sounds sometimes. Humming mostly. The girl lay in a hospital bed that dwarfed her tiny frame. Monitors beeped steadily. Her skin was pale as milk, hair a tangled black mass against the white pillow. The chains had left deep scars around her wrists and ankles. Can I have a moment alone with her? Eleanor asked. Dr. Winters hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. I'll be right outside. When the door closed, Eleanor moved closer to the bed. The girl couldn't be more than 10, the same age as Sarah in the photograph. Hello, Eleanor said softly. My name is Eleanor Blackwood. No response, just the steady rise and fall of the small chest. I think you might be Sarah. I think you might be my great-aunt. Still nothing. Eleanor sighed, reached out hesitantly to touch the girl's hand. The skin was cool, but not cold. I don't understand how you're here, or how you survived, but I want to help you. As their hands connected, the monitors suddenly spiked. The girl's eyes flew open, dark eyes, ancient eyes. Her lips parted. Eleanor, she whispered, voice like rustling leaves. You came. Then her eyes rolled back, and she began to seize. Dr. Winters rushed in with a team of nurses. They pushed Eleanor aside, working quickly to stabilize the child. Eleanor backed against the wall, heart hammering in her chest. The girl had known her name, had been waiting for her. Jenkins was waiting at Eleanor's cottage when she returned, surrounded by papers and open books. I found something, he said without preamble. Town council minutes from 1893. They authorized the removal of undesirable elements from the town. No specifics, but the dates align with Sarah's disappearance. Eleanor sank into a chair. She spoke to me, Jenkins. She knew my name. The historian went still. What else did she say? Nothing. She had a seizure right after. But she was waiting for me. She knew I would come. Jenkins removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. The Shepherds of the Grove believed in blood sacrifice. But they also believed in preservation. The hanging tree was their sacred site. You think they put her inside the tree? While she was still alive, I think they believed the tree would keep her suspended between life and death. A permanent sacrifice. Eleanor stood abruptly, moved to the window. That's not possible. No one could survive that. No, Jenkins agreed. Not naturally. That night, Eleanor dreamed of the tree. In her dream, she was small again, a child hiding in its branches. Below her, men in dark coats gathered in a circle. They wore masks carved from wood, faces of animals and monsters. In the center of their circle was a small figure in a white dress. Sarah. The men were chanting, words Eleanor couldn't understand. One of them approached Sarah with a knife. The blade gleamed in moonlight. The tree hungers. the man said, voice distorted behind his mask. The tree preserves. Eleanor tried to scream, to warn the girl, but no sound came. She could only watch as they bound Sarah's wrists with heavy chains, as they led her to the trunk where a narrow opening had appeared. Your sacrifice will keep our town safe, the masked man told Sarah. You will become part of something greater. They pushed her into the hollow of the tree. The opening began to close around her, wood flowing like water. Sarah's eyes found Eleanor in the branches above. Remember, Sarah called. Remember for me. Eleanor woke gasping, sheets tangled around her legs like chains. The town hall meeting had been called to discuss the lightning strike and the archaeological discovery within the tree. That's how Mayor Richards was framing it. A historical curiosity, nothing more. The medical impossibility of a living child preserved in wood was being carefully downplayed. Eleanor sat in the back row, watching. Jenkins had wanted to present their findings, but Eleanor had convinced him to wait. They needed more proof before accusing the town's founding families of ritual murder. The tree will need to be removed, Mayor Richards was saying. It's become structurally unsound and poses a danger to the public. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The hanging tree was a landmark, a piece of Oak Ridge history. Furthermore, the mayor continued, I've been in contact with state authorities about the, remains found inside. They'll be transported to a proper facility for study and eventual interment. Eleanor stood. She's not remains. She's alive. All heads turned. Mayor Richards squinted through his glasses. Miss Blackwood, I understand this is upsetting, but don't pretend this is about public safety, Eleanor interrupted. This is about hiding what really happened. What's still happening? A heavy silence fell. Eleanor felt the weight of every stare, the pressure of generations of silence. My grandmother knew, she continued, voice gaining strength. Constance Blackwood knew what the shepherds of the grove did to those children. To her daughter, Sarah. Mayor Richards paled. These are wild accusations. We found her journal, Jenkins called out, standing beside Eleanor now. We found the records your grandfathers tried to destroy. The room erupted in shouts and denials. Eleanor pushed forward, moving to the front of the hall. The girl in the hospital is Sarah Blackwood, she said when the noise subsided. Somehow she survived, and she remembers what was done to her. Mayor Richards slammed his gavel. That's enough. This meeting is about public safety, not ghost stories and conspiracies. Then explain how a living child was found inside a tree that stood for 300 years, Eleanor challenged. Explain the chains, the ritual markings carved into the wood. From the crowd, an elderly man stood. Harold Shepherd, grandson of the town's wealthiest founding family. You don't know what you're meddling with, Miss Blackwood, he said, voice like gravel. Some secrets are kept for the greater good. Whose good? Eleanor demanded. Not Sarah's. Not the other children who disappeared. Our town has prospered for generations, Shepherd replied. No floods, no fires, no epidemics. While other towns failed, Oak Ridge thrived. There is a cost to such protection. The admission hung in the air, stunning in its callousness. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. You knew, Eleanor whispered. All this time you knew. My grandfather told me what they did, Shepherd acknowledged. What they had to do. The tree requires sacrifice. Blood and innocence, freely given. Freely, Jenkins scoffed. They were children. Shepherd's face hardened. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. One child's life against an entire town's prosperity? The math is simple. Eleanor felt sick. And now? What happens to Sarah now? The cycle is broken, Shepherd said. The tree is damaged. Its power is fading. He looked around the room, at the faces of his neighbors. You've all felt it, haven't you? The change in the air since the lightning strike? The heaviness. Reluctant nods throughout the crowd. Eleanor had felt it too. A tension, a waiting. The tree will die, Shepherd continued. And without its protection, so might this town. Unless you find another sacrifice, Eleanor said, the horrible truth dawning. Another child to chain inside a new tree. Shepherd didn't deny it. His silence was confirmation enough. Mayor Richards banged his gavel again, desperate to regain control. This meeting is adjourned. Everyone go home, please. But no one moved. The truth had been spoken aloud, and it couldn't be unheard. That night, rain fell again. Eleanor sat with Sarah in the hospital room, holding the girl's small hand. Jenkins had gone to the sheriff with their evidence. Constance's journal, the town records, Harold Shepard's damning confession. I don't know if you can hear me, Eleanor said softly. But you're safe now. No one will hurt you again. Sarah's eyes remained closed, but her fingers twitched in Eleanor's grasp. I'm sorry for what my family did to you. For what this town did. Outside, thunder rumbled. The storm was gathering strength again. They're going to cut down the tree tomorrow, Eleanor continued. Maybe that will set you free. Maybe then you can rest. Sarah's eyes opened slowly, focusing on Eleanor's face. Not free, she whispered. Not yet. Eleanor leaned closer. What do you mean? What do you need? The others, Sarah's voice was faint but clear. Still there. Still waiting. A chill ran down Eleanor's spine. Other children? In the tree? Sarah nodded weakly. Many. Over the years. Their bones, their souls, trapped. How can I help them? Fire, Sarah whispered. Only fire cleanses. Only fire releases. Her eyes drifted closed again, but her grip on Eleanor's hand remained strong. The storm had reached its peak when Eleanor returned to the town square. Wind howled through empty streets. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the broken hanging tree in stark relief. She carried a gas can in one hand, matches in the other. The tree seemed to watch her approach, its split trunk like a wound in the darkness. Yellow police tape fluttered around its base. Eleanor ducked under it, stepped into the sacred space. I know what you are now, she said to the ancient oak. I know what you've hidden. She began pouring the gasoline, soaking the exposed heartwood where Sarah had been imprisoned. The sharp smell cut through the rain-washed air. This ends tonight. Headlights swept across the square. A car door slammed. Eleanor turned to see Harold Shepard approaching, leaning heavily on a cane. You can't do this, he called over the wind. You'll doom us all. It's already done, Eleanor replied. The cycle is broken. The tree can be saved, Shepard insisted. The ritual can be performed again. The town can be protected. At what cost? More children sacrificed? More lives destroyed? Shepard moved closer, his aged face twisted with desperation. My grandfather made a pact with something old, Miss Blackwood. Something powerful. If the tree dies without a replacement, then we'll face whatever comes on our own terms, Eleanor said firmly. As people, not monsters. She struck a match. The flame wavered in the wind, but held. Don't. Shepard lunged forward, swinging his cane. Eleanor stepped back, the match falling from her fingers. It landed on the gasoline-soaked wood and caught immediately. Fire raced up the trunk, blue-white and hungry. Shepard cried out, reaching toward the burning tree as if to save it. The flames leapt higher, consuming the ancient wood with unnatural speed. And then the screaming began. Not Shepard's voice, something else. Many voices, high and thin, wailing from within the burning trunk. The sound cut through the storm, through the crackling flames, straight to Eleanor's soul. The tree was releasing its prisoners. Shepard fell to his knees, hands over his ears. What have you done? He moaned. What have you done? Eleanor stood her ground as the fire reached the highest branches. The screaming changed, transformed into something almost like singing. Release. Relief. Within the heart of the flame, shapes began to form. Children, dozens of them, their translucent forms rising from the burning wood. They circled the tree once, twice, then dispersed like sparks into the night sky. Last came Sarah, her spirit form pausing before Eleanor. She looked peaceful now, the chains gone from her wrists. Thank you. Her voice whispered in Eleanor's mind. Remember us. Then she too was gone, rising into the storm clouds above. By morning, nothing remained of the hanging tree but ash and a blackened stump. The storm had washed away most of the evidence of Eleanor's act. She stood before the remains as sunlight broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the town square. Jenkins joined her, hands in his pockets. Sheriff found Constance's remains last night, hidden in the walls, just as she wrote. Eleanor nodded. And Sarah? Gone. The hospital says she just disappeared from her bed. No explanation. She's free now. They all are. Jenkins studied her face. What happens to the town without its protector? Eleanor looked around at Oak Ridge, the buildings, the streets, the people beginning their day. Nothing had changed, yet everything had. We protect ourselves, she said simply. We remember the past, but we don't let it chain us. She knelt by the burned stump, placed a small wooden box at its base. Inside were Constance's letters, Sarah's photograph, and a lock of Eleanor's own hair, a connection between past and present, a promise to remember. Some trees need to fall, she said, so new things can grow. Already, at the edge of the scorched earth, tiny green shoots were pushing through the soil. Life returning. Beginning again. Eleanor stood, brushed ash from her hands, and walked away from the hanging tree for the last time. Behind her, sunlight streamed through the clouds, illuminating the town in gold. Not the false prosperity bought with blood and innocence, but something simpler, truer. A new